Hello, welcome to the Business of Property podcast. I'm Stuart.
I'm Simon.
And I'm Emma.
We're all property people running our own businesses, and this podcast is just us chatting, as we often do, about anything and everything property. And this week, we welcome back Emma to the show. Welcome, Emma.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us again. And the last time you joined us, you've joined us a couple of times in March and April. The world's changed a lot in the last month and a half or so. So we thought it'd just be a really good time just to catch up with you, really, just to see what's happened as the market, the property market has, in inverted commas, opened again recently, just to see, what's happening and, more directly in your world, given that you're right in the coalface there with the property market. So, so how are things?
Yes, so things are reopened, things are moving again. It all happened pretty fast. I think it was last Tuesday night, we suddenly heard that the property market would open again kind of Wednesday morning. So it was a bit of a rush to hear the guidelines and get things together and decide how exactly things would move forward. It happened actually faster than I expected it to. I thought we would have a couple more weeks. But it's just a case of pulling things together to get going. So there's various guidelines from the government about how we can continue or set back up working around social distancing, around entering other people's homes, around taking people around other people's homes, because obviously you could be having many viewings, meeting many strangers, going through a number of houses, and we've got to be as safe and reduce risks as much as possible. So yes, last week was pretty busy trying to pull together all the advice, contacting our clients, and just trying to get things ready to be up and running.
And that's, from memory, one of the things that you don't have to concern yourself, you don't have a bricks and mortar element to worry about, do you?
No, exactly. So actually that's made life a lot easier. A lot of agents with offices have had to get organised with screens and how within that environment they can work, both with each other, other colleagues, but also having public coming in. And certainly quite a few agents at the moment are sort of operating behind literally a locked door. So they have a reduced number of staff in the office, and it's everything is by appointment only. And so that's how they're managing those challenges.
Yeah, I imagine a lot of businesses are wishing they were in your situation or are trying to work towards that without the retail front end, if you like.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think a lot of people have found that they're able to work from home, and actually the office isn't quite as vital as they'd thought, and also set up systems over the last few months of communicating virtually. But equally, they want to get back into their offices. But I'm quite glad not to have had that added job.
Yeah, it's funny. I've received a few emails this week. I don't know if you have, Simon. I've got from a few estate agents saying we're now open. Don't know if that's the case for you, Simon. You had that?
Only one, but yes, I have, yeah.
So the other thing I was going to just talk about, Emma, I don't know, had you already, because based on your business model, had you already set up a number of virtual viewings, i.e. done a number of recordings already for properties?
We had done a few. It's the sort of thing we were working on. We had done them quite informally. So as opposed to showing every aspect of the house and the rooms, I'd done a couple where I was walking around the house, talking, just sort of introducing the property as a general kind of just giving the vibe and the style, and just chatting a little bit about the location, etc. So that was a very popular thing to do, but it probably didn't in some way show a lot of the actual house. But we've started now doing virtual viewings for all properties, and the recommendations are that anybody who wants to physically view a property should have seen the virtual viewing first, and if they move on to a physical viewing, they do that if they're in a position to progress with a sale if they chose to buy. So it's cutting down the physical viewings as much as possible.
The virtual viewings you did before, were they one-to-one virtual viewings, or were they recordings that you then showed to multiple people?
Oh no, they were recordings that we just then showed to people.
it's quite interesting that you took the approach of walking around and actually talking people through it. The ones that I've seen of the virtual viewing and crop that's out there at the moment have all been, well, actually no, I think there's been two flavors. So one has been static photos that have just been put to music, which I don't really get much from. I'm not convinced by those at all.
No. Add much more than the photos.
What music, Simon? I'm intrigued. What music were they playing to a viewing?
I'm afraid I couldn't name anything. Once I realised there was no one actually telling me anything about the property, I just muted it. So I'm sorry, I wasn't there for the music. In fact, I didn't stay there long for the photos either. But the other style of virtual viewing, which I like a bit better, has been the sort of 360 degree photos where you can jump from point to point within the property and then
they're awesome,
move around and look about. Have you investigated those at all, Emma? I think you need quite a lot of kit to do those, don't you?
Yes. So no, our photographer in the last couple of weeks has got the kit and has got herself trained in that, and has just done for us, for one of our properties, a 360 virtual tour, and it looks great. Actually, it's really, really good. So we're using a bit of a mixture of me going with my phone, chatting. You see me, I walk around, tell you bits and pieces. We've then got the option of the 360, and then I've just done another one where I go around with the camera. I don't speak, but I just do a walking tour, and then there'll be music in the background. And the music just depends on whatever system I use to upload the photo, depending on what they have available. Probably not my first choice.
There's pre-chosen estate agent background music available from these systems, is there?
Well, it's not specifically estate agent. There's just a range of summer vibe, chilled evening, whatever type music. So we've got all three sort of out there at the moment. In some ways, the 360 is sort of the sleekest, because obviously, you're not walking around with an iPhone jiggling about a bit. But possibly less personal than if you're chatting, you give insights into the home, etc., that you might not otherwise get. So I think they all have a place. And I think we will decide that based on the individual property. Or we might do both. We might do a combination just to give people as much information as possible.
Have you had any or done any one-to-one viewings with the vendors, to walking people around?
What were the vendors doing, showing? No. That's not something we do generally. We don't generally ask the vendors at all, really, to do any viewings themselves. And I think in this climate, that's not something we would, unless the vendors wanted to. I think that, it makes sense for the vendors to be out. They leave all the doors, etc., open, so nothing internally needs touching. We go with masks and sanitizer, etc., and I wipe down any door handles that happen to be needed to be opened, etc., before I leave. So we kind of leave everything as clean as possible.
And the one question, I guess, coming from that, obviously from a sales perspective, is how's that now translating to interest in properties and offers?
I think it depends who you speak to. I mean, I have to say the phone has not been ringing off the hook for us. There's been more activity than there was a couple of weeks ago because nobody could do anything then. And I think there are people, I think there's been a definite speed up in the market. So everybody who had exchanged and was waiting to complete or had a chain complete, who are sort of sitting, waiting to go, a lot of that movement has obviously started again and people are able to move. So there's been a real surge from that point of view. But I'm getting some really quite mixed messages. Houses we've had on the market, people who had been under offer literally just before the lockdown, and those offers have sort of fallen apart, and people are saying, just need to see how things pan out, job-wise, income-wise, don't really want to be making any major decisions now. We'll keep things as they are, but we're in no rush. Suddenly, everybody now is sort of feels like they're sort of understandably putting the foot on the brake somewhat before making decisions. and certainly just sort of how it is at the moment, the houses we've had on the market, most people were looking to upsize. So they were looking to invest, and with uncertainty, they're obviously just wanting to be cautious.
Yeah, I think a lot of the properties that I've seen reappearing on the portals have been relistings. So they're ones that have either fallen through during this lockdown period, or they're ones that were removed right at the beginning of it and they're now being put back on the market.
Yeah.
Does that match with what you're
Yes.
seeing? Or?
Yeah, that certainly matches. And
there aren't that many new properties, or people suddenly saying, "Oh, right, I now want to sell my property," where they weren't before.
No, I think people have, if people have had it in their mind to move, they are now still, there's still some people, but I've had phone calls from people saying, "There's one house I want. If I can get in and love it, I might put my house on the market." So there's a lot less of that. I'm going to put it on the market, see what happens. I'll see what comes up, and take it from there. So they're much more specific reasons for sale. So actually he'll go and see that property, decides it's not as good as it was on paper, and then otherwise he'll stay put. So there's less testing the market, there's less browsing, that sort of thing. And I think buyers, certainly the messages I'm having from buyers is, we're a bit reluctant because if property prices come down, we don't want to be paying the price it was pre this, and we want to wait and see what happens to the market, because everyone wants a bargain and a good deal, and everyone's nervous about buying something overpriced and it going and property prices coming down.
How have you seen prices actually looking at the moment? Not a forecast into the future, but right now, my looking at the data that I've seen seems very mixed. I've seen some properties going for reductions, presumably trying to get quicker sales.
Yeah.
But I've also seen other properties being increased, and new properties that I've seen coming onto the market seem to be coming on at a level higher than I would have expected. Am I imagining this?
No, I don't think from what I'm seeing, agents aren't valuing differently to how they were before. And I suppose you can only go on properties that have sold at the price pre-lockdown, as opposed to just take a leap into, we probably think their prices will come down. So I think it's going to be a test over time to see what the buyers are going to be doing.
Well, it makes sense because, all of the, like Rightmove and all of the other sort of key performance indicator companies that provide data have pretty much paused their data because they say they've got nothing to be able to share because essentially the market's been paused. So that kind of does make sense that, where are you going to go back to? You'll go back to what it was pre-COVID, I guess.
Yeah, then the sort of new market will show whether properties can achieve those prices or not. We've got to kind of, I suppose, test at the point we left off at. And then if buyers are coming in, the market will tell us in the end if those prices can stand.
Yeah, I guess the fear always from my perspective and as sort of like property people, both buying and selling, it's always a double-edged sword because, I'm probably about to put 2 properties on the market to sell. Yeah. And then equally I am looking for something to buy personally. So you kind of like, you can't win. But the thing that I guess scares me is that point that you've made, which is where people wait to see what happens in the market. And then, of course, the noise at the moment, a lot of the noise is saying, well, we're either in a recession or about to go into a recession. And therefore, everybody steps back and says, well, okay, I won't go into the market. Then, transactions decrease further. And that actually causes the very thing that most people want to avoid. Yes.
Yeah, because you have the headlines of we could hit the worst recession the country's ever seen. And you think, best not get involved in that,
Yeah.
Just, you want to stay safe and be cautious. But as you say, that just adds fuel, doesn't it, to the situation?
Yeah, I mean, most people aren't going to want. You're not going to want to put your house on the market when everyone's saying that this could be the bottom. You're not going to want to sell it for the lowest you think it could ever be worth.
No, and I don't feel the market's there. But what we don't know is if the buyers are actually there. We just because once we've sort of exhausted the initial people who were close to buying before, and whose position hasn't really changed, if that group sort of gets exhausted and then we find that people are wanting to wait. But I think it's going to it's just going to take some time, because that may never happen. The buyers may continue to trickle through, and certainly in this area around here, we're close to London. There are lots of people still wanting to move out of London, and that will just keep things ticking over.
Yeah, I suspect there may even be more people wanting to move out of the city and towards the greener countryside.
Well, exactly. So there's going to be a whole sort of raft of people who are going to want to move out of London, and that might simply be enough to keep things moving.
Yeah, and if you look at other trends, I was reading about this on the weekend. Such as in, say, Paris. That's kind of exactly what's happened. There's a lot of people have moved out. They're not sure if people are going to move back in again, because if some of the rules stay in play around sort of social distancing for a period of time, which most of us expect to happen, then obviously metropolitan cities aren't going to be the best places to be in terms of proximity to other people. So
if the working from home life is seen as being quite a long-term thing now, then people need to change their homes to provide that bit of space, or just change their setups. And if they're not paying to commute into London every day, there's money will be spent differently, and people will live their lives differently. So all of that will potentially sort of
have an impact,
keep the ball rolling.
Yeah, a possible counter to the people moving out of London thing, though, might be a reluctance to use public transport as much. And of course, if they're moving further away from their job, they'd need to use public transport more. So perhaps we'll see, if the working from home thing doesn't persist quite so much, perhaps we'll see more people living close to where they work. I wonder if that will also be a demographic shift that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And around here, it's going to depend what happens with Gatwick, and if lots of the big airlines move out of Gatwick, or there's just so much unknown.
Gatwick's not looking very positive at the moment.
No, and certainly
Virgin said they're staying away, didn't they?
Yeah, and I think BA are talking about the same. But we do know that any uncertainty impacts the housing market. Even if it's just a local election, things go quiet just before. So uncertainty of this scale will have an impact, but then there'll be other aspects which will push it along. So we'll see.
Yeah, and that was the frustration, wasn't it, when we last spoke? Well, when we first spoke in March, that we were experiencing the Boris bounce, because regardless of people's political views, we finally had certainty. Just to exacerbate your point, is that's the thing, is when we've got certainty, regardless of outcomes, then people are more positive about making decisions, and that's the challenge. And as you've said, I think no one can really predict it. It's just going to take time, day at a time, to see where we get to.
Yeah. And I think there will be changes within estate agency. There's a lot of push for the portals to reevaluate how they work, and whether that's Rightmove, Zoopla. I mean, Rightmove is hugely expensive and has a huge monopoly, and people are kind of rebelling against that. And so in the sort of functioning of estate agents, I think this will have forced, hopefully, some change. And we'll see we'll see changes to how the portals are run.
Just on that point, have we seen any? My experience of them is small, because I know we've got On the Market and Zoopla, and I know there's probably a couple of others. But are there any other new challenges entering the market because of this? Do you think?
Yes, there are. One is called HomeSearch, and they had a system up and running before this, which was quite new, and they're trying to bring in I don't think they're quite calling it a portal, but basically a portal, to challenge Rightmove and Zoopla, and shift away from having a very high cost to estate agents. Because without a doubt, for me, like the Rightmove fees are the highest monthly outgoing of everything. I mean, it just overshadows any other costs. And so that will make a really big difference, I think, particularly in this period. If somebody can have gain enough momentum to be a real challenger, then I think that would be really good. And I certainly, as I say, I know HomeSearch is one. There's another one that I can't think of at the moment. Obviously, Zoopla are trying to come in and sort of push Rightmove off their perch, but there's a bit of rebellion against them as well at the moment. The estate agents.
It's going to be tough, isn't it? Because Zoopla, Rightmove's a bit like Google. If we want to search something now, we Google it. That they've taken the market on search, and my feeling is, well, I think it's pretty obvious that Rightmove has that, and I shudder to think what percentage of people go to Rightmove first, and it's got to be 80% plus that will go to their first online to search.
Absolutely. Well, actually, when I opened, I made the decision to go with Rightmove alone and not go with Zoopla as well, because of the ramp up of costs and the number of clicks Rightmove get. I'm not going to give you statistics. I'm going to get it wrong, but it vastly outnumbers Zoopla on a daily basis. That if anybody's looking, they will look on Rightmove. So it will take something pretty huge to shift that. Because it's a mindset, as you say, you think looking for a house, look on Rightmove, Google, exactly that.
I think in March when we spoke, you said that Rightmove were thinking of doing some reduced fees for a little while to help estate agents get through this period. Did that actually happen? And have any other portals done that?
Yes, yep, they're in battles. So Rightmove initially offered something like £250 off a month. I mean, again, don't quote me. And there was uproar because people are paying, on average, upwards of £2,000 a month. It was like, this isn't going to be enough. And then they offered 75% reduction for, I think it was for 3 or 4 months. Zoopla have come in offering all sorts of things like 9 months free. And then if you sign up to an 18-month contract, but you have to leave Rightmove. So there's been lots of sort of battles and kind of gentle, quite hard bribery going on to sort of buy you in. And so, yeah, I'm just watching and waiting. So HomeSearch had said they would produce something late May, but they've said it'll now be kind of into June because they want to get it right. So, I mean, I think it's what's good, I think, is having some serious discussions and some serious potential competition coming in, because it will make the bigger portals who kind of can charge what they like reflect. And if they are going to keep their customers, they are going to need to do things slightly differently. But Rightmove themselves are I spoke to them this week, and they're saying, they aren't sure how things will move forward, what they're going to do with their fees, how long they can keep reductions going, because if we get a second wave of COVID-19 in a few months, they need to be being able to sort of bridge across this long term as well. So it's not easy for anyone.
No, I think that's coronavirus, isn't it? It's not easy for anyone.
No.
Right. We're kind of getting close to running out of time, if we haven't already. But that's a bit of a down note to finish on. So have either of you got something nice and positive we can finish on instead?
Well, I mean, it will pick up. Everything comes back round. And there will be, hopefully, I mean, that's almost a down note, but also you're looking at, from an agent's point of view, these sort of portals are being challenged. We might have a new way forward. Working from home without an office is becoming more the new norm, which is really positive. And it hopefully will sort of help develop into a slightly new way of working, which will work and be positive and a good way forward.
Yeah, the more working from home and more working locally, I think, has got to be good for everyone, for their time, their sanity, and indeed the planet as well. So,
yeah.
So yes, excellent thoughts. I should talk to you more often. That's good.
There you go. Dollops of positivity for you there, and I wholeheartedly agree. I think obviously aside from the sort of humanity aspect of this whole period, I think there's a lot of positives to come from it. And we'll take a lot of learnings, hopefully, and a lot of things will improve as a result. Let's hope.
Right, you're better at the outro, Stuart. Do you want to take us out?
Well, okay, so that takes us to the end of the podcast. And as always, if you're enjoying the show, please do leave a rating, review. Feel free to contact us. And for show notes and for all previous episodes, just go to thebusinessofproperty.com. Until the next time.